Hello, welcome to my new video on the Specialized AI Professional Preparation Guide. So in this video, we looked at the classification. In the previous video, we discussed about the properties of the taxonomy and how you can use it for your document understanding projects. That also covered including multiple document types in, in a document understanding flow, like invoices, purchase orders, and so on, or any other custom document. So in this video, we are going to talk about this classification and how this is important to your document understanding workflows. So what is classification? Classification is all about trying to understand what kind of a document we are trying to process. Each document, just like you see in the image right now, each document will have its own fields that we want to extract. So for us to do the extraction properly, the first thing to understand is the document type. So in a process where you need to extract or process multiple document types, classification plays an important role. So what are the classification methods we have in UiPath? We have several methods. So within UiPath, we have three ways to classify a document. One is the keyword classifier, second one is the intelligent keyword classifier, and lastly we have the machine learning classifiers. So we have three options. Are we going to use all three in a single process? Well, that depends on what exactly you want to do and how the documents are structured and so on. Each classifier has its own strength and its weaknesses based on what it is intended to do. So if you look at the grid here, the keyword classifier. This can classify documents based on simple keywords or a set of keyword groups. However, it cannot split a PDF file. So for example, if a PDF file has invoice and a purchase order in two different pages, keyword classifier will not be able to split it and say the first page is the invoice and the second page is the purchase order and so on. Only thing keyword classifier can do is classify that entire document into a specific category based on the keywords. And of course, keyword classifier is trainable. The intelligent keyword classifier is slightly different. It can classify the document, but it can also identify what each page has. So if in a PDF file, if the document has multiple document types like invoices, purchase orders, and so on, intelligent keyword classifier can tell you, okay, from this page to this page it's an invoice, and from this page to this page it's a purchase order, and likewise. So that's the ability that intelligent keyword classifier brings for more advanced classification requirements. And of course, again, you can train the intelligent keyword classifier with your own data. The difference here is when you're using the keyword classifier, you can specify the keyword. In the intelligent keyword classifier, you are not specifying the keywords. You will upload the documents into the classifier trainer wizard and it will automatically figure out what are the keywords needed to classify this document into specific categories. So I'll show you shortly how the screens looks like for these activities. And then comes the machine learning classifier. The machine learning classifier has a different purpose. So let's say you have documents that are not structured or semi-structured. Let's say you have set of document that has a lot of unstructured content where you are not really able to specify a set of keywords to classify it. So in such cases, you can use the machine learning classifier to handle unstructured documents. But the downside of the machine learning classifier is it cannot split. So the splitting capability is given to you only by the intelligent keyword classifier. But all three classifiers you can train on your data. So this is how we have we can do the classification in UiPath. So let's quickly have a look on these classifiers, how it looks like in the workflow. So I have a pre-built workflow over here, which I created for my last video on that taxonomy configuration thing. So let me just place the activities needed. So for classification, the main activity is the, the scope activity that we want to use, which is the classify document scope. So the classification happens after the digitized document activity. In here, we have a couple of inputs that we need to give, which is the document path, document text, document object model. These two comes from the digitize activity and the taxonomy. The output of this is actually a classification result array. So let me just create this variable so I can show it to you. And if we go into variables, you can see this is an array of type classification result. You can also see the long version of that variable type. So down inside this activity, we can place all our classifier activities, all or either one that you want to use. If we use the keyword based classifier, you can point it to a JSON file to store the data. So two classifiers will use JSON files, keyword based classifier and the intelligent keyword classifier. But they cannot use the same JSON file because the data you store in these two are different. So keyword classifier will use a different way of storing data in a separate JSON. The intelligent keyword classifier should have its own JSON file. Um, okay, let's quickly edit the path here. So let me just take a copy of this taxonomy so that I can easily create a JSON file. And let me also clear the content inside this. And I'll point it to keyword classifier. So in my taxonomy manager, I have created two document types like invoices and something called creative brief, which I used for my previous video. So for the keyword classifier, you can define your own keywords. You can basically specify the keywords that you want to use like this. You can even give multiple words. If you want to club these things together, you can even do that like this. So all these options are there where you have more control and you can add the keywords and you can save it. This gets saved in the JSON file that you pointed. For the intelligent keyword classifier, the screen is slightly different. And this also has an endpoint that is pointing to default intelligent keywords endpoint. And you also have the API key. And for this one also, you need to have a JSON file to store the classification data. So let me just quickly create a copy of this. And play the content of this file. So this is the file that got created earlier with our keyword data. Here it is. Okay. And in this screen, you can see this is slightly different. Here you cannot specify your own data. You can upload the documents through this wizard. You can have multiple documents and use a OCR. And once you do the training, it will automatically figure out what keywords you need. So you can upload either one or multiple documents. For the machine learning classifier, yeah. So it connects with your AI center and it is also pre-trained for different document types that's available out of the box in AI center. And you can even train it for your own document types through AI center. So that's a different topic altogether. But for machine learning, you just need to point it to the skill that's available and get the capabilities so that you can configure it. Configure classifiers option over here. So in here you can specify which classifier to use for which document type. You can even use a combination of classifiers to classify a specific document. So this is how you configure the different classifiers, and this is how it looks like. And for each classifier, you also have a classifier trainer activity and a classification training scope, which you can add after this to train the classifiers based on manually verified data. It's not about the initial training. The trainer activities are used to fine tune the classifiers based on the manual corrections that we do while the process is running through the validation station or through the action center. So this is the classified scope. Now, is this classification step mandatory for all document understanding projects? It's not. It's only needed when you have multiple documents types to process. Just like what we have here. If I want to process invoices and different other types of documents in the same process, and if that's the business requirement, then yes, you need the classification step. But it's not mandatory. So if that's not a requirement, you can simply ignore this entire activity set from your flow and directly go into the data extraction scope. So in that case, how are you going to specify the classification in the data extraction? Because I mentioned earlier, if you are using the classification, we if we are to extract the data, we need to tell what kind of a document this is. Um, so to do that, we have two options here. So in the data extraction scope, for classification data, we have two input fields. One is the classification result. The other one is the document type ID. So let me show when to use this configuration. So let me just undo so that I can get this uh, activity set here. I'm not going to run the flow, that's why I'm just creating this flow in a way you can understand how to build it. So before getting into processing only one document type, let me tell you. So if we have the classification, this will give us a classification result array, just like what we have here in the variables panel. In case you have multiple document types that you get, maybe you have the intelligent keyword classifier, you have the keyword classifier, and you have multiple document types. So where to place the data extractions if you are not using the document template? In that case, the first step to do is user if condition and check whether you got any result for this classification result array. You can say auto classification results and check for the count. If this is greater than 0, that means you have data in your classification result array. And inside that, you can place your data extraction scope. So usually, as a best practice, if we are using classification, we also use a parallel for each here. The reason to do that is when you have multiple document types, let's say it's a PDF and it has two document types. First one is the invoice, second one is a purchase order. And if we use a for each, these things will get processed one after the other. But if we use a parallel for each, we can process them parallel and extract the data parallel without running in a sequential order. That's the best way to do it. We can use a parallel for each and loop through our extraction results, and the, the type argument of this is the classification result, because we are looping through a classification result array. And inside this one, you can place your data extraction scope. So if we place it here, then you can use this property, classification result, and you can set it to item, the one that you get from this loop. So that's when you use that one. But in case we don't have this classification activity set, then how can we define? In such case, we don't really need to use a parallel for each or even check for this. In such cases, we can simply have this activity outside and use the document type ID, because we already know which document type we are processing. So where to find the document type ID is coming from the taxonomy manager. So in the taxonomy manager, if we select a document type, here you can see the document type ID. You can copy that and place it in here like this. And you automatically get connected to that type, and those fields will be reflected in your data extraction file. So that's how we configure the classifier activities. Now let's see when to use these classifiers and what are the best practices that we have. So you have some pro tips mentioned in the academic course, the Build Document Understanding Automation in Studio. In here, in the Classify Document Scope section, where you talk about the studio activities, there is a very interesting section that talks about the the activities and some best practices. So make sure to read this because this is very helpful for you to understand how to use these activities and when. So it has some information like how to decide which activity to use based on what, and when you are using the intelligent keyword classifier, I told you that we need to train it. So when we are doing the training, what are the best practices to train the intelligent keyword classifier? So we use the intelligent keyword classifier. I want to focus on this more because this part is important and this thing you can easily read. But I want to specifically mention a few things for the intelligent keyword classifier. So we use the intelligent keyword classifier when you have multiple documents to process in a single PDF file. And when we talk about multiple documents, each document can have a single page or even a set of pages. So in such case, you need to train your classifier in a way where it understands these different documents separately when you are given a PDF file. So for the training purpose, don't use a single PDF file that has all these document types when you are doing the initial training. The ideal approach is split it. Have separate PDF files for each document type. And if a specific document type has multiple pages and you want to identify that whole set as a single file, you can have all those pages in a single PDF file. But in case you want to identify each page separately and identify and classify each page into different categories, then the best approach is when you need to you need to have PDF files that has only that page and use that to train your classifier. So that way, your classifier will be able to identify each page separately and classify it to its respective category, even though it belongs to a single type. So those are little things that you need to keep in mind when you're implementing this, and it's also helpful for your knowledge as well for your certificate. Yeah, so that's about the classification which I wanted to share. So read through these tips, and so I'm covering two. I'm actually getting this content from two courses. One is the Build Document Understanding in Studio and the overview because it has combined set of data, and also refer to the documentation that's available. I have also mentioned the links in the description, a video description, so that you can easily refer to them. So that's all I have to share about the classification. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a message or mention it in the comments and I'll reply to you. And that's it. So thank you for listening and I'll see you in another video on a different topic.